All right, so from the previous video, we learned that this 2001 ZXI 1100 has air leaks underneath the, get it in there, where the two pickup tubes go into the tank. There's an O-ring under there. I need to see if the O-ring's there, number one. It may just be that the screws aren't tight enough. But I'm going to pull it and make sure the O-ring's there. I've also got to pull the fuel sending unit because it isn't working on this one. I think I've got some that I built that should work. He claims that the floats are good on this one. So even if I've got some messed up floats, I could swap floats onto another unit and get his, hopefully get his gauge working. I mean, it could be an issue with the gauge, but we'll see. I can always pull his unit and put it on my STX over there and test it. It's the same plug. So I do have a way of actually testing his and make sure it is bad before we go changing it out. Simply because I have a jet ski that is compatible with the sending unit. So let's get started. Let's pull the pickup tube assembly and look for the O-ring or the flat gasket that's supposed to be under it. All right, I've got the fuel sending unit out. I've got the jet ski switched to on. If you turn it upside down, that puts the floats in what would be the full position to read full on the gauge, which you can see it is not doing. So he was saying he didn't think this worked. He said he thought that the floats actually float, but he bought a replacement, a used replacement, I think off of eBay, and it is not working. So when that's the case, you've either got a bad gauge or there's some sort of electronic piece that's in the head of these. Probably is some kind of diode resistor or something. It's inside here. It's bad. So this thing isn't registering. I will double check it on my ski over there. Okay, I've got horrible video conditions because of the glare and outside, and I can't change that. But if you look on here, it's showing the tank is full. The floats are all down. His sending unit is hooked up in my ski. This sending unit is no good because it is not sending a proper signal. Even if you plug that up, it should start, those will start dropping after a few seconds, and they're not. The glare is terrible. You can't see it too well, but it's there, reading full with all of them in the down position. So that's not right. Okay, here's another one. Same result. So I'm gonna have to say maybe something's wrong with the gauge. Yeah, I'll go test this one on. I don't have the piece on the end, but that doesn't matter. It's reading a resistance voltage from the magnets that are in the floats, in the tops of them. And so when you tip it upside down, your fuel gauge should go to full. It's not doing it, even with a different fuel sending unit. So something's going on. I want you to see that the gauge is going down to nothing. It just did. See, it's flashing now. I can block some of this sun. So this is the one I just kind of put together. So it's reading 0. Now let's tip it upside down. See what happens. It should slowly start to climb up. It takes several seconds for it to start reading. If the gauge is, if the sending unit is good, it'll start, you'll see that these bars will start going up. I'm going to push a button to keep, see, there it goes. See, it's starting to climb already. And we're going to see, this is a digital gauge. It takes several seconds for it to read the ohms of resistance difference from the magnets to tell it, look, there's another bar. It's going up. It's going up. and it should go all the way to full. So keep that. Terrible lighting. I apologize for that, but just trying to show you this is how you test these things. And as I said, it takes several seconds for these. And if you leave it too many seconds, the thing will this display will shut off without the engine running. So that's why I keep hitting the starter. It's interesting that it hasn't gone past half. Could have a bad magnet on one of these. It should go all the way up, and it's not. So that reading comes from the magnets that are in the top of the floats, and this should simulate a full condition to where that should go all the way up, and it's not. So I could have a bad magnet on one of these, and that is why it isn't reading. See, now the screen's timed out. So, well, I even tried taking my long one and getting a tubing cutter and cutting it shorter. It only read full all the time over on my jet ski. So all the parts I have here, I'm assuming they're no good for anything. The one will read somewhat, but not properly. It could be just a magnet issue with that one. That would be that one. I don't want to dig any deeper into that. I've spent too much time trying to get one functioning. These are expensive parts to replace. He's just going to have no fuel gauge. That's just the way that's going to be. I'll check fuses to make sure it's not a fuse issue, but his gauge does not work on my ski, and my ski would have shown a proper reading with that. There's no difference in these for the STX, ZXI. They all function the same way, and they are interchangeable. So we'll move on to the next problem, which was the leak. I'll try to fix that leak. I'll just put this part back in. He won't have a fuel reading. And then he wanted me to look at the trim motor, which is really, that trim motor is nothing but a door window lift motor. All right, so we got the pickup tubes out. He has bought an extra set, and he put fuel pump screen socking. This is perfectly acceptable to do this because the screens are no good on this one. But here's why it was leaking. Look at this. This gasket's shot. Look at this. This is why it's bubbling. This gasket is no good. That ain't gonna seal anything. So it's also real gummy. It's done for. So that's got to be replaced so that this can seal off like it's supposed to. Now this one also had a problem with the knob being too hard to turn. And you'll notice, once again, the cords leaving the cables on, your screws won't fall out even if you turn it upside down. So keep that in mind. Like I said, this is perfectly acceptable to put these socks for a fuel pump screening, to pre-screen your fuel before it gets to your fuel filter. This isn't turning well, so I've got to see what's going on with that. I do have another one of these assemblies that's got the same issue. It's good, but the screens are shot on the end of it. So, but this is a very common problem with any of the old Kawasaki's, is that these tubes, and these, these probably aren't too far from it, they'll start cracking, and it's like trying to suck soda through a straw with a crack in the side of it. You suck air at the same time you're trying to drink, and the engine's doing the same thing. It'll lean you out and you'll lose a cylinder over it though. So let's see what's going on. There is an O-ring under this. Pop this off with a screwdriver, this whole black piece, and look under there and replace those O-rings. I'll probably go very least do that, but I've got to see why it's so hard to turn, because you can't even you can't even turn this. So let's work on it. Okay, so I pulled the vent assembly apart. Remember, you pull this plastic, there's a tiny spring behind it, and then a tiny little plastic washer before you get to these rubber lips, I'll call them. And this one I don't like, because like that O-ring, it's gotten gummy, and the rubber is starting to, in other words, they're sticking together. It's sticking together too much, almost like glue. So I'll pull one out of mine, I guess, or I may replace the whole thing with mine, depending on if I can get this freed up or not. But I don't like how this is doing. This is the problem with the old used parts. They're old and used. This rubber's in gummy condition where it's ready to start breaking down. So maybe best to replace it. Now, I do suppose that if you had to remove all of this, you could put a regular inline vent like a Yamaha's got in it and do away with this stuff that Kawasaki has. I don't see why that wouldn't work. Put a one-way vent just like a Yamaha, where it's just like an inline filter. Pull all this out and just be done with all of that. So that would work too. So he sent his old one of these. Has an extra one of these little rubber pieces in it. So what you want to do when you test this, this is a one-way check valve is what that is. It's a vent for the fuel tank. You want to check your line, blow through it. It comes up underneath the cowling so you can't see the other end of it. Keeps those mud daubers from filling it up too. But you should be able to blow into this, but not suck air out. And it's working perfectly. So, and you can put a tube on there if you don't want to put your mouth on it, whatever. But let's go see if I've got one of these so we can fix this thing. So indeed, raggedy thing, look at that. I do have one. Only because I've made trips to the junkyard to get this piece and pulled the whole thing and kept the spare gasket. So you're lucky there, my friend. I do have one. And let's see if we can loosen this thing up. Okay, so it looks like this unit has an issue. Look at this. It will not turn. Now here's his old one. Very easy to turn. So let's see. The knob works just fine and the cables work just fine. So the problem is here. For some reason this won't turn, so let me try to pop that off and see what we can see. All right, so look at this. Let's see if we can get the sun back here. This is the, you know, that corrosion in there. It's just thick with it. I think this is a saltwater ski. There's a clip, and when I popped the clip, it went flying. But this sits down in here, and the clip that fits in these 4 grooves and controls the flow. So what you do is you get you a big screwdriver, and you pry this off. Then you got this thing with 4 little clips, which went flying on the other one. I'll have to have this one. I doubt I'll ever find it. Luckily he had this one here. What I'm going to try to do is clean his up. So what I found is mine is for the smaller tank on a 900. And look at this. See how the tubes aren't long enough? Now you can fix that by cutting these, put you some extendable Tygon tubing on it. It'll work just fine. But I think what I'm going to do, the reason it wasn't turning is all this grease was shot and ruined in there. This one that he had was the original one on the ski that the tubes went bad on. So you pull this out. Once you've got that clip out of there, this little 4-prongy clip underneath the top, then this whole thing will pull out. Where's my, this We'll pull out, boop, like that. And it's got the O-ring on it that needs to be replaced. I'll go ahead and replace that O-ring. But you can see this one is cleaner and would have worked well. So, but the tubes were no good. Okay, so the position of putting this back together is very important because it determines fuel flow through this. This is the off position. See the little, you've got a square, but it's got a little piece sticking out. It's pointing to the right. Now, I should have noted that before I took it apart, but this is basically this is how it's going to be reading. Off, dead center there, reserve here, on there, both cables directly in the middle. And when you have it like that, that's how that piece is centered. You put it back together wrong, it ain't gonna work, okay? So that's how it goes, and then nice little pop with something to seat that back down. That's how it goes. Piece to the right. See that piece sticking out on the right there? As you have this facing towards you. Off, 12 o'clock. That's how it goes. Okay, so in doing that, look at this. Perfectly smooth operation now. And I took the metal part out of his old one and stuck it in there instead of using the corroded one that was there. So there's that. This can go back together now. New gasket. I think I'll put a little bit of petroleum jelly or grease on that when I go back. That's what I did on the O-ring here. So it's all nice and lubed, ready to go. All right, here we are, pressure testing the fuel system yet again. I sprayed the soapy water. I'm going in through the return line. I've plugged off the inlet to the carburetor, going through the return. I'm looking for bubbles. Nothing around the cap. Not seeing anything around the hose, filler hose. Nothing. It looks like we have a successful, you can see we don't have bubbles this time from there. Nothing. You can see it's soaked up really good, really well soaked up. Using low pressure, no more than 3 psi. Looks good now. We are going to see if this thing will actually start and stay running, which he claims it wouldn't before. So let's try it out. Let's put these lines back on and try to start it up. Okay, I got this thing fired up, but we got a drip on the return fuel line, so we need to cut that hose and rebundle it. But this one's also doing a runaway idle. Let's see if I can show you how that works. A lot of times, let's see. So that means I've got an air leak probably at the base of the carburetor, sucking air or something. Well, the idle's set way too high on it. Let's see if it'll still go when I pull the lanyard. No, the lanyard will kill this one. Some of them they'll get go. Maybe I didn't let it go high enough. I think we got an air leak at the base of the carb. I've got 3 new carb gaskets I can stick on there. Okay, carb's out. I have seen people double up on these gaskets before to keep these things from leaking. These are the paper ones. I like the ones that have the metal in the middle of the fiber. They just seem to work better. I've got 3 brand new ones. I'll clean this. reseat it with some new ones. Very important if you do run premix that you plug these holes like he's done here. You want to plug your oil ports on the bottom of your carburetor. If you're removing the oil pump, you have to do that. Since I've got the carburetor out, it is a good time to get involved in that right there. His trim isn't working. So it's just 3 10mm bolts that hold that entire box down, and then you can kind of pull it up, but you've got a cable that runs to the back that's hooked to it that isn't so easily disconnected. So I'm going to go ahead and do that while I've got this carburetor out, just because it's much easier to get to that box at this point. And maybe we can take a look and see what's going on with his trim motor. You know, I don't know if I can fix it. I went to the jet ski junkyard yesterday. They've allowed the weeds to grow up as high as I am tall, so it's very difficult to get in there. There's mosquitoes everywhere. I tried to get one of these trim motors out of one yesterday. It was so badly rusted when I had opened the box up, I didn't even want to take a chance on it. When you get to that motor, the cords that go into that box have these same plastic like this box has on it, and they break. And so if you get water in your hull, the water goes into that box, goes in there and shorts your motor out or rusts it out and that sort of thing. But I can go ahead and take that out. I'll take the motor out. I can put 12 volts to it, see if the motor will run. It could be bad, you know, grease could be hardened in there to where it doesn't turn. The motor may still be good. I don't know. We'll pull it out. This jet ski was kept well. It's in very good shape to be a 2001. So we'll mess with the wiring, because it could be a wiring issue with that motor. As I've shown in previous videos, just messing with wiring, just cleaning with things, cleaning contacts on electrical wiring can sometimes fix your problem on these older jet skis like this. So I'm going to attempt that and hope that that's the issue with his trim motor. I think the ski is rideable as it is, but you know, it is pointing down a little, not straight out, but I think you can ride it like that. The wheel spin, so the speedometer should work, unless the entire instrument panel is not going. So we'll see. Just pulling more stuff apart, so let's do it. Okay, so here's your box that holds your electrical trim. The 1100s came with the automatic trim with the blue button. I think the 900s, they had this, but it didn't have the automatic feature on them. Maybe some of them did, but the ones I've seen in the junkyard did not have the little blue button, the 900s. All of the 1100s did have it. They're just automatically trimmed based on acceleration. And you can see the plastic that I was telling you about. This one's broken. This one isn't. So it's the same Allen wrench, I believe. Yeah, it holds the carbs, all that. So you get the 310s. It's much easier if you get the carb out, all that out of the way. You can see, boom, you get right up here. I've covered my intakes so nothing falls down in there. I don't think that cable is so simple that you just slip that off and it pulls off. I think it's locked in there somehow. I don't know, maybe we'll figure that out. We'll see. But let's open this box up and have a look inside. Well, there it is. There's your story. All kinds of corrosion in this box. Someone had been on some sandbars or something. The sand and what have you has gotten all in there from that crack. Normally this box would be sealed, and boy, it's full of stuff. Look at that. All kind of stuff in there. Definitely don't want none of that going down in your intake. This motor is as rusted as the one that I looked at in the junkyard. That ain't good. I'm going to say the motor's bad. And then it looks like it's got all kind of some kind of gear contraption built onto it. You can see there's moisture in there because that's bad, that's broken, and water got in on more than one occasion, it looks like. It's pretty crusty in there, baby. Anyway, I'm going to say that motor's going to have to be replaced, so let's take that thing off. It was the 310s to get the box out, which is much easier facilitated with the carburetor being off. You might be able to finagle it out with it on there, but it's going to be a tight fit getting it out. Boy, this thing needs to be cleaned. Yeah, I want to hermetically seal my intake before I get to moving this thing around too bad. Go get me some speed tape and tape those intakes off. I don't want none of this going down in there while I'm trying to mess with any of this. I've got it covered with the towel, but I don't think that's good enough. So let me take care of my intake, and then I can like hose this down or blow it out with air or something. It's horrible. Okay, so there's two Phillips screws that hold this controller box. It has a brass plate underneath here that those two screws go into. Now that, you can see, is connected to a worm gear where this thing can move this like this. And then this obviously is telling it what position that it's in so that it can read out on the gauge what position it's in. This thing's full of sand, so that's got to be flushed out. I've blown it out with air. Just having the sand itself in the gear is going to keep that from working. It'll be a miracle if the motor works at all, if you really want to know the truth in the shape that this is in. It's probably going to need another one, but I don't know whether those parts are readily available anymore or not, other than from a junkyard. And the problem with the junkyard is those things have been sitting there for probably 15 or 20 years, some of those skis. Because of 96 all the way up to whenever they quit making this, around 2001, they're all the same. They're going to have this same box in them. I guess I can clean this out, plug the wiring up, and see if this thing will actuate. This bottom cable, this comes undone here, but this is threaded in on the bottom there. You can see there's, I don't know if it shows up on this video or not, there's threads down here. And so it's threaded into place down there. So it isn't like, oh, just unscrew that and pull it out. It doesn't work that way. This is about as crusty as you can get, I guess, with this. So no point just looking at it. I need to go ahead and remove these 4 Allens here and lift this assembly up out of there. Clean everything up. Boy. Okay, so here's what we got. Basically, this is a window lift motor. Most of them usually have a gear right here instead of a hex bolt looking thing. A window lift motor usually has a gear. That's the motor part. So, if you could find just a can that would fit on here, you may be able to get this working, but you probably got to clean this out. This is all gear. This head is nothing but a gear. So what I'm saying is, even if you couldn't find the correct this, swapping this from a working motor may get this going, although it looks like there are some electronic components sealed up under there. I plugged the wires back in with it removed. There's nothing working. There is a big shim on here with an indentation. The bolts that hold, there's 3. They had Loctite on them that hold this onto this. 3 bolts. And then there were 4 bolts that held the entire assembly down. They were short with washers. Like that. And they all use that same 3/16 hex Allen, or probably a 4 or 5 millimeter in metric. Now I can take this part, and you can see I can turn that, even with all that gunk in there, and get that piece to move, floating around in there. Well, actually the whole thing's moving out. So that's still got to be cleaned. This is going to need a new motor. I'll try to figure something out and report back what I find, but that motor's toast. It's toast. Hopefully the sending unit that tells it where the angle of the nozzle and how it pitches in the water, hopefully that the bolts on there is still good. That's going to be proprietary, but this may be able to come up with a substitute for that. So I'm going to have to do some research and figure that one out. But that's going to be it for this video. That's how you get to your trim motor. I did take the cable off trying to loosen it. I hadn't quite figured out how that works yet, but it does have a special clip that goes in here. There's a washer, which has probably slid way down the cable now, but this kind of holds in place, and then all that screws on. But yeah, this shim piece goes on here like this. So you've got that. I didn't show that on video, so I wanted to make sure to make a note of that. But yeah, this is threaded into that assembly, and that does need to be cleaned. I mean, it still needs quite a bit of cleaning. Man, it's amazing how much stuff got in there. Anyway, that's it for this video. I'll see what I can do about fixing that, getting the carburetor running. We'll hopefully have a video of this one running soon. I've got to go to work, so it'll be another week before I can work on it. Thanks for watching the Shadetreejetski channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to see more of this content if you enjoy it. And I appreciate all of your support. Links will be in the description for Amazon parts. Hopefully by the time this video comes out, I will have found a replacement part for that is somewhat affordable. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.